Not all feelings are equal. Some feelings are your nervous system doing its job accurately. Some feelings are your nervous system doing its job, but processing old data instead of current data, responding to what has happened before rather than what is happening now. And some feelings are something else entirely, the product of what you want to be true, dressed up as perception. The problem is that from the inside, all three feel the same. They all have the quality of felt truth. They all arrive with the conviction of something real. I trusted a feeling that belonged to the third category. It cost me 2 years of my life and a relationship with someone who deserved better. His name was Adrian. We met when I was 28, at a time when I was actively trying to undo a pattern I'd identified in my previous relationships. I had a history of choosing unavailable people. Not physically unavailable, necessarily, but emotionally guarded. The kind of person who was present in all the visible ways but fundamentally withheld from real closeness. I had a therapist who had helped me name this clearly, and I had, I believed, done enough work to recognize and avoid the pattern going forward. Adrian was available. He was open and present and direct about what he felt. He would tell me what was on his mind without being asked. When something bothered him, he said so. When something delighted him, you could see it on his whole face. He was, by every metric I developed to identify the problem, the opposite of the problem. And I didn't trust it. That's the feeling I'm talking about. I felt, persistently and despite evidence, that his openness was a performance. That eventually I would find the guarded, unavailable person underneath the accessibility. That it was only a matter of time. I felt this so strongly that it organized my behavior toward him for 2 years. I tested him. Subtly, nothing overt, nothing I would have characterized as testing at the time. But I would create small situations where, if he were secretly unavailable, that unavailability would show itself. I would pull back slightly and wait for him to either close the gap or reveal that he preferred the distance. I would be slightly more demanding than the situation required and watch to see if he'd withdraw. He didn't withdraw. He kept showing up. Consistently, patiently, in ways that should have been disconfirming evidence that my feeling was wrong. And I interpreted his persistence not as genuine character but as continued performance. I was waiting for the mask to fall. It didn't fall because there was no mask. But I couldn't see that yet. Adrian said to me, about 14 months in, "I feel like you're always waiting for me to become someone else." I said, "That's not fair. I'm right here." He said, "You're right here. But you're not all the way here." I didn't know how to respond to that. Because it was true, I knew it was true in the moment he said it, and also I didn't understand it fully enough to address it. I was right there and not all the way there simultaneously, and the part of me that wasn't all the way there was the part that was waiting for him to be someone he wasn't. The feeling I was trusting, the feeling that he was secretly guarded, secretly unavailable, that I was going to be disappointed, was not intuition. It was expectation. It was my history wearing the clothes of my present. I've learned, since, the technical term for this. It's called a cognitive schema, a mental framework built on past experience that filters and organizes new information. Schemas are useful. They allow us to navigate the world without having to process everything from scratch every time. But they can also make it impossible to see what's actually in front of you, because what's in front of you is being run through a filter that's built from somewhere else. My schema said, available people become unavailable. Every warm, open, accessible relationship I'd watched in my family and my early life had eventually cooled into distance. The schema was built from real experience. It was just being applied to a person who was not part of its history. We ended, eventually. Not because Adrian became the person I was waiting for him to become. Because I couldn't sustain the gap between who he was and what I expected him to be. The relationship ended not from what happened in it but from what I kept anticipating. 3 months after we separated, I ran into him at a friend's gathering. We had a brief, civilized conversation. He introduced me to the woman he was seeing. She looked at him the way you look at someone when you've decided to be all the way there. I don't blame him. I had 2 years to decide to be all the way there. I spent them waiting for a disappointment that was never going to arrive. The work I've done since, the specific, concrete practice, is about distinguishing between what I feel and where the feeling is coming from. When I have a strong feeling about someone or a situation, I've learned to pause and ask, does this feeling have current evidence? Or is it built from somewhere else? If I can't identify the current evidence, the feeling is probably historical. Probably a schema. Probably something to be examined rather than trusted. This doesn't mean dismissing all feelings. It means giving them a context check. The feelings that have current, specific evidence are worth trusting. The ones that are persistent and strong but can't be grounded in what's actually happening right now deserve a second look. Adrian deserved a second look. I gave him 2 years of waiting instead. I'm learning to tell the difference. Not quickly. Not perfectly. But better than before. And that's the only direction that matters. There is something I want to add that I think is essential to the story, not as a coda, but as the part that actually contains the lesson. Understanding what happened is only half of it. The other half is what you do with the understanding. And for a long time, I confused having insight with having changed. They are not the same thing. You can understand a pattern completely and still enact it perfectly, because patterns live below the level of understanding, in the body and the habit and the reflex. Real change requires not just seeing the pattern but building a different response, not once, but repeatedly, until the new response starts to feel as natural as the old one did. That process is slow. It's humbling. There are weeks where I can track the insight and weeks where I slip back into the old behavior before I've noticed it happening. And the slipping back, I've learned, is not evidence of failure. It's evidence of learning. You can only see the pattern when you're outside it. When you're inside it, you're in it, and the work is to build enough awareness that the outside perspective arrives faster. What helped me most was specificity. Not I want to do better, but the concrete, exact question, what will I do differently in this specific type of situation, the next time it appears? What is the exact moment where the old behavior begins? And what is the alternative action I can take at that exact moment? Those questions, practiced, tested, refined, are what actual change is made of. Not resolution. Not insight alone. Specific, practiced, repeated alternative actions. I'm not done. I'm not fixed. I don't think that's how this works. But I'm different than I was. In specific, measurable, real ways. And the story I've just told you is part of why. The telling matters. It keeps it from becoming something I store away and don't examine. It makes it real, again, every time I say it. And real is where the change lies. I think often about the version of myself that was inside the experience, not this one, the one that can look back and see it clearly, but the one who was in the middle of it, navigating with partial information and real fear and the limited emotional resources of someone who hadn't yet learned what was happening. That version of me was doing the best she could with what she had. That's not a get-out-of-accountability-free card. But it is a necessary part of the honest accounting, because self-understanding can't be built on self-punishment alone. At some point the punishment has to give way to comprehension. And comprehension, real comprehension, requires some compassion for the person you were before you knew what you know now. I didn't have the tools I have now. I've built them since. Slowly, imperfectly, with help from therapists and honest conversations and the specific, uncomfortable practice of sitting with things I'd rather not sit with. The goal is not to arrive at a version of myself that doesn't make mistakes. That version doesn't exist. The goal is to make a different kind of mistake each time. Not the same one, wearing a new costume. A genuinely new one, smaller, or at least different in its shape, because I'm bringing more awareness to the territory than I had the last time. Progress doesn't feel the way we imagine it will when we're inside the difficult chapter. It doesn't feel like transformation. It feels like the gap between impulse and action getting slightly longer. Like the moment of recognition arriving slightly earlier. Like the voice that says, "Wait, not yet, is this what you actually want to do here?" Getting just a little louder, a little more reliable, a little more present when you need it most. That voice is there. It's always been there. I just had to learn to stay quiet long enough to hear it. And that's the practice, in the end. Staying quiet enough to hear yourself. In all the noise of living, in all the urgency and the wanting and the fear and the pressure, staying quiet enough to hear what you actually know. I'm still learning. But I'm listening now.